every Wednesday night. It's the awesomeo.com late golf show. Myself, Ben Raza, here with Jason Roslin, as I always am. But look who we wrangled in. We have a third man tonight. We got the man himself, Alex Baker, joining us for the late show. Thanks for making time with us, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I think this is my first golf show with you guys. I mean, I want to go beyond for a little bit. I respect the work you guys do every week. I mean, like golf analysis is really a difficult thing to do. That's why I like stay on the back end of it all because, yeah, I mean, I couldn't talk an hour about these guys, but hopefully I can make it 15 minutes.
Yeah, baby steps for you, man. But it's yeah, thanks for coming on. Obviously, good stuff. Usually we do football. Obviously, Jason, you know the drill by now. What's going on, man?
Yeah, just trying to figure out, why you and I talk about the guy that needs to be in the lineup, and well, for me personally, I didn't put him in there, and I don't know if you did, because this is a guy that you and I have talked about so much and gone through a period of hate, and we're talking about Cameron Champ, of course. went through a period of hating him, went through a period of, okay, maybe he's all right, and now it looks like he's all of a sudden back to being a good golfer. So that's why I wanted to bring you on, Alex, because you not only took down some football GPPs, but you took down the reigning $8 mega GPP on Draftkings last week. And I'm just going to pick your brain for at least a little while. And Ben, feel free to jump in anytime you want.
For sure.
So for most of our listeners, if they don't use a lineup software, let's start with that first off. To make your golf lineups last week, I assumed you used Fantasy Cruncher, correct?
Yeah, I did.
All right, good. We can get that out of the way right away, because the previous week, as I mentioned on the show to Ben, our buddy at Fantasy Cruncher, he owes me lunch because for some reason he was on vacation, couldn't do the golf stuff. So it was my worst GPP week of the year 2 weeks ago. So he owes me lunch. Anyways, that's for another day. So let's go through the process, Alex. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you, because Ben and I it's been a topic of discussion the last 2 weeks. Do you factor weather into your golf lineups at all? And if so, did you last week at all?
Yeah, to be honest, it might be a leak of mine that I don't account for weather enough, because I just don't have a great way to account for it, to be honest. But I do respect the idea of tee time stacking and stuff. I was actually joking about it last week. You're kind of I want to stack the Sunday tee times.
Yeah.
But
wish it was that easy, right?
Yeah. I think weather is a thing, and from what I understand, it can swing things maybe a stroke or two if you have particularly good bad weather. So that is a consideration. They do even it out a little bit in the PGA by having the splits where a guy who starts Monday or early on Thursday then does the late shift on Friday, and vice versa. So that typically balances out a little bit. Of course, you can only really predict the weather accurately for Thursday, and when you go farther in advance, it becomes much fuzzier.
Yeah, no, very true. And I guess that's where Ben and I, we went back and forth a lot the last 2 weeks. We're should we even incorporate it? It doesn't need to be in there. Is it statistically significant enough in what we're seeing to actually alter our lineups? And I know last week it got me a little bit. 2 weeks ago, it probably got me a little worse. So good to know that. It seems like, at least for last week, you didn't really look at it that much then, correct?
Yeah, I was really just going off the ownership and how good of golfers these guys are.
All right, so let's talk about that. So I'm gonna take a guess, a gander, that you made 150 lineups for the $8. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, that was just a wild guess. Just wanted to just want to make sure of that though. One of the main questions I had: what was your core play in that the 150 lineups? What would you say your setting was for your top player as far as an ownership allocation?
Man, that's a great question. Let me pull it up in lineup study real quick, because what I did is I actually made 2,500 lineups, and then I chose my favorite 150 from those. So the crunch I did is actually a lot different in ownership than the actual lineups I chose.
Very interesting. Can you go over that process a little bit with me? So you make the 2,500 lineups. How do you choose the 150 for that contest?
I really look at my projections and ownership, and I'm trying to find like sweet spots where, um, I have a couple of guys that are low owned sleepers, and then I have the studs, and that kind of gives me a good chance of cashing for each week because I have some guys that are pretty consistent, but a great chance to win it outright when one of those sleepers really hits. And that's why I got really, really lucky last week. And of course, you got to get super lucky to take down one of these tournaments.
For sure. And I noticed that your total lineup for total ownership for the lineup was about 65%, a little over that. Justin Thomas, Charles Howell, Dylan Fratelli, Daniel Berger.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Adam Hatterman and Cameron Champ. Alex, I'll tell you a story about Daniel Berger another day. If you catch our show, you'll know that I'm maybe not the hugest fan. But 65%, is that your goal with each lineup that you make? Or let's say the 150 that you picked. That 65% to 70%, is that your sweet spot in total ownership that you're looking for?
I think it varies a little bit from week to week. Last week we saw that the ownership was pretty spread out between different players. And what I noticed last week in particular, in addition to the previous weeks, is that the fields are just much, much weaker this time of year than normal. So what I've been finding is that, there's maybe 50, 60 guys out of 150 that are kind of worth playing. And then you can kind of eliminate most of the field.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
No, I was just to add on to that. It's true that, in this time of the year, there's a lot of guys who they know their best shot for FedEx Cup points is to get into these events where some of the top end guys are resting or on vacation. So it just drags the fields down, and a lot of these guys just can't compete. So you can thin that field now with these new cut rules. It's incredibly difficult. And Alex kind of talked about that. To hit one of these GPPs, you need to connect the dots. Obviously, you're going to need 6 of 6, even though it's become, 3 to 5% we're seeing each and every week. Do you like the new, I know we only have a couple weeks, Alex, have you found you like the new rule to make it that much harder?
I think so, because one thing I really like about it is you can actually plan out the weekend golf a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot more complex when there's that third round cut. And I'm kind of excited that now I can just post my weekend golf projections at the start of each week instead of waiting to see who qualifies and whatnot. But also, I mean, really doesn't affect your how you're going to stack up versus the opponents.
No.
It does make you a little bit more certain after 2 days whether you have a real shot or not.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that anything 6 of 6, at least in these first 3 tournaments, you're totally live, no matter what contest. And, just looking at your winning lineup, I mean, it had winning Champ, obviously. Talk about Cameron Champ, 4% owned, had come off a pretty good week. I saw you had a really funny tweet out there before you came on. Was he a core play, or was he one of those fill-ins with Justin Thomas and Charles Howell that you threw in there?
Definitely not a core play. Let me see how much I had him. I got the lineup study pulled up. I had him. Weird. I'm not even seeing him in my list here. But anyway, I actually wasn't that high on him. I have I keep track of everyone's performance, and then I normalize it based on the competition and the course. And I have Cameron Champ as about a par player over the last year or so. He's played about 80 rounds of golf since he's been a regular player on the PGA. Just barely better than average. But he had won a tournament previous to that. And his odds to win at the sportsbooks were actually a lot higher than that kind of being a par player justifies, because this is a guy who has so much talent and just is really, really inconsistent. So I took that into account and bumped him up a little bit because of that. And I just got really, really lucky. I mean, that's all it is to it. I had him as by far the weakest player in my lineup that won it, but he won the tournament. So that's just like what it takes sometimes.
Sure. So the two guys up top, Justin Thomas and Patrick Cantlay, obviously Thomas was in that lineup for you. Did you play both of them, or did you just give your shares up there to Justin Thomas?
I had I mean, these guys I had as pretty close.
Okay.
Justin Thomas I had with I projected scores for each round, and I had Justin Thomas at about 69 and Cantlay at 69.2. So I had Justin Thomas as the better play. I mean, I think like that's pretty obvious. He's had better results pretty much any time frame you look at, better odds. So I mean, I was focusing more on Thomas.
Okay, fair enough. So him coming back from, last week, the whole thing was he was coming back from a surgery he had in the offseason. He barely got to practice much. He didn't feel well coming in. Do you even listen to that noise?
I do sometimes. Maybe I don't listen enough, but it worked out for me this time.
Sure.
The general feeling I have is that if a guy is playing an event, they're usually healthy enough to really play. Most guys won't really have much incentive to play in an event where they feel like they're at a disadvantage. Of course, when you get to like playoffs or something, maybe that's a little bit different. But especially these kind of missable events, like Justin Thomas really had no reason to play in this event. No. So I mean, the fact that he was there to begin with was a good sign.
Yeah, it's true. Especially up top. I was just going to say, again, some of the lower end guys, they know I probably should play in this, but Justin Thomas can set his schedule. There would be no reason for him to push it. So you have to assume if he's in the event, he's ready to go.
So target allocation, do you have that in front of you by any chance? Like how you separated Thomas and Cantlay in that regard of the 2,500 lineups you made? Was it like a 40% you tried to get Thomas in, a 30% Cantlay?
So actually I have it in front of me now. I had 26% Thomas and 24% Cantlay. Okay. And a big reason for that was Cantlay was a lot lower owned than Thomas. It ended up being about 22% to 14%. Mm-hmm. So that kind of made up for the difference in skill to some degree.
All right. So last couple of questions. First one is when you're picking through your 2,500 lineups and you rely, like you said, heavily on your projections that, of course, you give out every single week. Anybody that wants it, just awesomoplus.com member. That's all you got to be. Plus, you get Ben and I on Slack anytime you want us. We're always buzzing in there. Question is, like I said, 65% total ownership was what I saw of the lineup that won. Do you have a number that you don't go over for these large GPPs? For golf specifically, obviously.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of sorting through our ownership projections, and I found that the highest lineups I made were about 75%.
Awesome.
I think we had the lineup I won with, I had it projected for 53%, so we were a little bit low on some of the players in it, like Cameron Champ. But you don't have to go so far off the board. It's the top owned lineups usually have all the chalk plays, because that's the only way you can make a lineup with a really high projection. So I do think it's worth sacrificing some projection to get some differentiation from the field.
Especially in a high variance sport like golf, where it's just, you talk about the NBA and it's a whole different animal where minutes are so correlated to production. This is a sport, this has a lot of baseball similarities where on any given week, bizarro things can happen, and you definitely, you don't want to just build optimally in terms of what the projections are going to spit out. You want to change it up, be cognizant of that ownership, because we see all the time, as Alex talked about, Champ was actually the anchor of that lineup. That's probably not what any of us would have thought looking at the six guys.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Now, I will tell you that for what I just asked Alex, for the total ownership per lineup, there's actually a setting in there on Fantasy Crunches that you can do. Just go into advanced options and then go into my data, and you'll be able to create a rule that way. So that's how I've done it, at least. Just want to give that tidbit. So last question before you get out of here. this is one that I'm really interested in because we saw last year 3 golfers come out of nowhere. Colin Morikawa, Matthew Wolff, and Victor Hovland. For somebody that uses a lot of projections based on regression and stuff, what do you do with these super talented guys that you literally have no data on?
Yeah, I mean, you can get some data from the web.com tour, which was renamed. I'm not up to date quite yet.
Corn Ferry. It's the Corn Ferry. Yeah, it's all good.
Tour. Yeah, I mean, that is difficult data to analyze because you have to normalize it to the PGA. But it is valuable. Like we saw, Denny McCarthy had a really good season in that. Hasn't really panned out that much in the PGA level, but some other guys in that group like Sung J M, Cameron Champ have been terrific. And a big way like you can kind of identify some of the players is, like without being kind of like following the Corn Ferry Tour, is looking at different sports books and see where the odds fall. Like they don't tell you exactly how good a player is, but they kind of set a baseline of how bad they are, because like they wouldn't offer like really good odds for a bad player.
It's a great point.
For a good player, I mean.
No, I think it's a really good point. Just curious because I know that, you know, for somebody like you said that you use your projections a lot. These guys sometimes come out of nowhere, especially Colin Morikawa and Hovland and Wolff coming out of college. So wanted to get your input on that. Thanks a lot, Alex. I appreciate it. Ben, you got anything more before we let this guy go?
No, I think it's always, you know, one of the things we preach just as a company in general is don't just move on to the next week. Go back, look at lineups, see what worked, see what didn't. That truly is how you get better, is break down some people's lineups. Obviously, he's a great one to do it with. So thanks for stopping on. Go rest up because me and Alex will be on tomorrow breaking down Rams Seahawks. So you will get some showdown tidbits from us both. And
yeah, I saw $400,000 to first place
bad.
tomorrow night. Not bad. Yeah. That'll be fun to talk about. Listen to.
All right, I'll split with you guys here.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
right. That works.
I'll make one plug before I take off here. One thing that we've added to the premium product in the recent history is that I added some more predictions to the projections. Namely, the chance that a guy will make the cut, the chance they'll be in the top 6 of the tournament, and the chance they'll win. And these are my real projections. They're not based on the Vegas odds. So I think those are value, just kind of like the upside of players. And also if you want to take it to a sports book and bet on some of these odds they offer.
Very true. I mean, that's one thing, you know, in golf, there's a lot of different ways outside just of DFS you can look at this data, draw some conclusions and try to get some value, because outrights, head-to-heads, definitely worth checking out. All right, man.
Alex, thanks a lot. Next time we get together, hopefully it'll be in stateside. But if it's in Scotland again, man, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that at all.
We got to call Fanduel up, see if we can get something going.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, thanks, Alex. Much appreciated, and we'll hope to emulate and copy what you did this week.
Yeah, let's get some takedowns this week.
That's what we're going to try to do here. So we'll get
into, Alex. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it again.
Yeah. So
all right, see you guys later.
Later, man. So yeah, now obviously chat looking ahead, we have Shriners up this week, which is a good tournament. I like the field out in Vegas. People want to know about Brooks. I guess we're just going to dive right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, Brooks I just said he's probably already at Tao, at the clubs, running amok. What do you make of him? Because he's so polarizing right off the bat.
So I think the first thing we can talk about with Brooks, and I'll give a little plug for the golf course, TPC Summerlin. It's one of my favorite of the year, only because I've been playing it in video games since 2000 when they threw it in the Tiger Woods. They actually threw it in the video game, the computer video game one in 1999, and finally hit Tiger Woods in 2000. The course, it's so easy, and I mean that there's nowhere to get in trouble. You can't make a lot of big numbers. So why do I relate that to Brooks? Well, we've seen him miss the cut twice here, but we've seen him make the cut twice and come in the top 5 twice. So it's almost like, all right, who's playing in Vegas? Well, what stars are there? And I don't mean golf. I mean like what rappers are there or what artists are there or what's going on to correlate these miscuts and then the top 5. I just don't understand. So Brooks also mentioned in his press conference that he had a torn patella tendon, which seems to me like, I mean, when I saw Victor Cruz tear his patella tendon a couple of years ago, he never played football afterwards. So I'm a little nervous about that. But as Alex just mentioned, Brooks wouldn't be here if he didn't want to be here. However, his brother is also in the field. So that makes me a little concerned that he's here so that his brother could get the sponsors exemption. Obviously, Brooks calling up the tournament director and saying, yeah, I'll come, just give my brother an exemption. I don't know if that happened. It feels like it did, but what do you make of it? I don't know if you watched the press conference or not.
I saw pieces of it, and so I'll say this. Brooks, we're not going to be able to quantify any of this stuff with him. Yeah, he apparently is a little banged up and got some off-season work done on the knee. We always know that his motivation is questionable. Then on the other side, just to take devil's advocate against myself, he looked pretty upset that Rory did win Player of the Year. And maybe he comes out from the start and says, you know what? People think I only want to win majors, and I'm Brooks, and we know how good he is. There's no denying that. But this is a guy we haven't seen yet, whereas Cantlay, Bryson, and some of these other guys have played in the swing season. I worry I don't want to say they're red flags. There are just some things that being with Vegas, being the first tournament, his brother's there, that when you look at the price tag, I found myself more often than not going elsewhere. I think he's not going to be nearly as popular as a guy like Cantlay. So I do have some shares of Brooks, but I didn't want to just, self-immolate, light everything on fire from the start. And I went kind of more balanced than stars and scrubs.
If you take the PGA, the US Open, and the WGC out of his strokes gained statistics, I'm not going to lie, they look really bad. I mean, they look like a normal average tour player. He's not by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not trying to say that. But when you just look right statistically at my board, I mean, he only gained total more than one stroke 4 times. And obviously 2 of them were wins. And then that one second place at the US Open. It just seems interesting to me that, he's able to consistently score pretty well, even though his numbers just don't look that great. 11,700. It seems pricey to me. Though I said to you last week, Justin Thomas at 11.8 seems pricey. But if you went to Cantlay last week over Thomas, it's likely that wasn't the reason you lost, but it very well could have been. For example, for me, I had Cantlay in a lineup in the 500 last week. If I had found my way up to Justin Thomas, it wouldn't have even been close. I would have been way in the cash. I finished just outside the cash. So these decisions obviously can be very crucial if you're going to play somebody up here. And then I guess that's the thing is, if you play somebody up here, you have to hope that they top 10, because if not, you're using up so much of your salary to go and get them. Again, Alex just talked about, Justin Thomas being in his lineup last week. So it's very important to have him. Now, what do you make of Patrick Cantlay and Bryson DeChambeau, as some people have said, the bores of the tour, really playing well out in Vegas? Do you make anything of that? Or do you really think that none of these guys are going out and partying? They're all focusing on tournament days.
I think we just don't know. That's the thing. You can't really cherry pick it. Some guys may be more likely than others. But, Cantlay clearly likes this course. His game fits this course. The ownership is going to mass up there. And then Bryson is someone who we're seeing signs. The upside, we know how hot he can get. But at the same time, the weekend was not what we thought. After 36 holes, it seemed like his tournament to lose, and then he wasn't even a contender. The irons really went away. So you have those guys, and then you work down to, some of the other options, whether it be Webb, Scott, Finau, Decky. I don't mind starting with guys like that. You're going to be able to use that extra salary to bolster the back end of your lineups. And we're preaching how hard it is to get 6 of 6. I don't want to say it's easy, but one of the ways to do it is to maybe not dip extremely low and try to go more balanced. But again, you're sacrificing some win equity when you do that.
Yeah, and I guess I'll say that we're probably, obviously there's so many golfers below 7K, But we're probably, with that being said, we're probably going to get as many below 7K to get through the cut as we are in that 7 to 8K range, just because of the way these tournaments have been unfolding. Now, one more quick thing on Cantlay. Do you think, because he came in at about 13% owned last week, 1.66 ball striking, do you think that's why people go back to him?
I think that people are going to look and they're going to see that it was the putter, and then the course history is ridiculous. It's only 2 appearances, and it was a first and a second. So that, I think, in swing season where we haven't seen a ton of these guys, course history is going to matter a little more to people, especially if you're just casually looking. It's like, oh, boom, Cantlay played. He didn't putt it great. Oh, he's going to a course where he's won and was runner-up last year. What's not to like? I think that's going to garner a ton of ownership, which I have no problem starting with Cantlay, absolutely. But if you do, you just want to make sure that you start to already be cognizant that you're going to need something different for those other 5.
For sure. So let's move down. I think a really interesting discussion is Adam Scott. So he went to UNLV for the 1 year he was in college. Does that matter? Let's just start quick. You can give me a yes or no. Does that matter to you that he went to UNLV for a year? Does that make you more likely to play him?
No. I think when I'm looking at guys, if I find out that they live in Vegas or they went to UNLV, if I like them, it makes me like them a little more. But I'm not going to say I don't see it this week. Oh, wait, this guy spent some time at UNLV. Let me overhaul my player pool. It's just one piece of data and a minor one at that.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, I agree. I think maybe we'll get into a couple of other players that maybe I'm a little bit more apt to look at it, but that's more because of where they're priced.
Exactly.
Rather than Adam Scott. So continuing on, Scott shot 7 under, had the first round lead last week, ended at 9, but it was off the tee, which off the tee this year, he's only lost strokes off the tee 1 time statistically, and that was at the WGC where he lost 0.05, so not even a full stroke. Last week, he lost over 4 strokes off the tee. What do you make of that? And is that something we should be concerned about, or is that something a reason to roster him this week?
So that's the big elephant in the room. I mean, I don't know what to make of it. He could not drive the ball. Like you just said it, strokes. I mean, massive leak off the tee last week that prevented him from possibly winning that tournament.
Yeah.
This is a forgiving course, but you can't be doing that. So maybe I looked at him. I do really like Tony Finau, who is right below him in the pricing. He's a guy that he's coming over from Europe, but he's played this event a bunch. He can be aggressive off the tee. I do like the spot here on bent grass for him. So Scott's a guy, I wouldn't fault anyone from going there. It wasn't a priority. I mostly got up to Cantlay or Bryson or down to guys like Finau, Morikawa range where we start to get into that next tier of players.
Yeah, and it seems, we just talked about how pivotal ownership projections are, and the guys, Alex and the team does a fantastic job. And Ben and I, of course, give our inputs to them, but they run the numbers. And they've got Adam Scott and Tony Finau right at about 18% each. So I think I'm leaning with you. I would rather go to Tony Finau here. At least 5 straight made cuts here. I think it's more than that, though, right? I only go back to 2014 just because it seems a long time ago, 2013.
He makes this a staple of his swing season. He obviously likes the course or the venue or whatnot. So people, and I get it. Tony Finau is not a winner. He's won once, the Puerto Rico Open a couple of years ago. But we've seen Paul Casey, CH3 to an extent. These guys, they can't win until they start winning, and then the narrative changes in a hurry. So
sure
I'm not gonna worry about something like that with a guy like him. But what I wanted to ask you is, as we look, there's a couple other guys here where we see Neiman's already won. Champ is won last week. They're aggressive drivers of the ball. Do you have interest in those type of guys in the top of your lineup?
So Neiman is interesting because he's a little bit removed now from that win, and he took a couple of weeks off, at least a week off. 14% at 9.5K though for me, or 9.4K he's at. That's a little bit high. I would rather pay $200 more and go to a guy that I've seen play well for years, right? And that's Gary Woodland. He's going to be lower owned. He's just a little bit more expensive. He's got a top 10 here last year, the 18th place in 2017. We know he's an elite ball striker. So I guess I'd rather take the ownership discount, pay a little bit more, and go get Gary Woodland.
Fair enough. I mean, Woodland we know he's got talent. We have not seen him. And you're gonna not find many things that check out across the board. And if you do in swing season, those guys are going to be massive chalk.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys like Scheffler, guys like Cantlay. One other guy in chat asked about doing it differently, and that's who he is. Sneds is on fire with the putter, as he always is. Another week off the tee game relative to some of the guys he's priced with. Do you think a course like this helps that, where maybe it doesn't put as much pressure on him off the tee? Or do you not really want to go to a guy doing it all with the putting?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're not at Jordan Spieth levels with Brandon Spieth.
No.
Brandon Spieth, listen to me. Brad Snedeker, sorry. Because he's gaining. He gained around the green. He grained down his approaches last week. He just lost off the tee. If this was Spieth, it would be 4 strokes gained short game, 4 strokes gained loss on the ball striking. Snedeker's not. He matched the field in ball striking. If Spieth matched the field in ball striking, he'd win every week. So with that being said, if you caught my new podcast earlier, I had Matt Jones on, and he mentioned that Snedeker's one of the best scoring from par fours, 400 to 450. Him and Webb Simpson are both way up there. So I think that's interesting. Whenever Snedeker's priced in a relatively decent field, and I'd say this is a decent field, price 9.2, he's not going to be over 10% owned. You can almost guarantee on that. Yeah, and he's on a good stretch of good putting. We're changing surfaces this week, though, are we not? So maybe that screws with him a little bit because his name isn't Jordan Spieth. No, I'm just kidding. The putting has been ridiculous. If you go back to the Northern, he's gained at least 3 strokes putting in 4 straight events now. I would rather pay $300 more for Colin Morikawa, who's just been absolutely ridiculous, insane with everything else except his putter. And Gary Woodland is there as well. I'm still not quite there with Snedeker. How about you? Are you?
Not really. So when you can putt like that in a birdie fest, you're always going to have some appeal. And we've seen with Sneds, he has a 59. He can get crazy hot. But there are so many other players around him that I like. It squeezes me pretty tough. So maybe he gets on a couple lineups, but not going to be a main play. Benny On is someone who was so bad last week that the ownership discount that you would get relative to if you say he didn't play and we just had his one swing season result where he's right in the mix, finished runner-up or third or whatever, I'm willing to forgive. You're not going to get consistency across the board with some of these guys. I'm going to jump right back to him. Morikawa, you mentioned, is just good. There's no denying that. And then, guys, I mean, you've got to like Scotty Scheffler, right? I mean, what's not to like with him at this price?
Yeah. So one thing I'm betting on, the last time that he had lost strokes off the tee was the PGA Championship. So that covers like 9 events. So that just goes to show you, as bad as it was last week, it's the first time that it had been bad. And last time that he lost over a stroke off the tee was at the RBC. He bounced back the next week and gained about 2 strokes for the tournament. So not really worried about that trend continuing. However, if I'm going to play Ben Hanan at 9,000 or Scotty Scheffler at 8,800, why aren't I looking at the lower part of this price range with JT Poston and Matt Wolff? I mean, you could throw Charles Howell in there for that mix, but I guess if I'm going to play Scotty Scheffler, why aren't I looking at Matt Wolff, who, similar in nature, they're both great putters. They both pound the ball off the tee. They're both obviously highly decorated, young kids at this point. Scheffler's, I think, 24. Wolff is still maybe not even 21. So we don't have to worry about Wolff going to the clubs, actually. Now that I think about it, I don't think Wolff is 21 yet, so we don't have to worry about him. Did Wolff cross your path this week? Because he's a big play for me. I think this course, he can't – I say that now, knock on wood. I don't think he can find any trouble here, and I think that he's just going to absolutely tear it apart with how good a putter he is.
So Wolff, to me, is a guy, and I've talked at length about this already this week. When we look back at this tournament, he is one of the guys who, in terms of seeing a price that could be wildly inefficient either way, he's number one on the list. I think he could be possibly. I don't think it's outrageous to say he could be one of the best players in the entire field in a couple of years when we look back. Or we could say, wow, that guy won an event and he really didn't materialize like we thought. So at 8,200 on DraftKings and similar price on Fantasy Draft and across the board, I am definitely willing to take stabs with him because I lean towards the former that we're going to say, wow, can you believe he was behind 20-something golfers here? Look how good this kid is. I wouldn't be stunned to see him add another win pretty quickly. He's got that kind of talent. So I'm with you. JT Poston's putting it together. He won at Wyndham late in the year. Just good ball striker, can make putts. No problem with either of them. I actually prefer them over the guys like CH3, Glover, Kokrak, even Ches, who I don't have a problem with him, but give me the discount with those two guys, absolutely.
Yeah, and Poston, now granted he gained 2 weeks ago, he gained, over 4 strokes around the green, but he still gained everywhere else as well. He gained with his putter, he gained ball striking. And if you look at his win at Wyndham, he did something similar. So obviously, and if you follow him on Twitter, he's made it a point to try and be more consistent, and he feels that he's one of the best players on the tour. So definitely something to make note of. Miscut fourth and a miscut year. So as you have seen with Boston and his finishes over the last couple of years, they're a bit erratic, but he's working on that. And at 8,300, this guy he's been on a really good stretch of golf dating back to the Rocket Mortgage. He missed the cut at the John Deere when of course, he was part of my core. So if he's part of my core this week, which of course, if you want to know what it is, sign up for the awesome.com plus. If he's this week, he's probably going to miss the cut as well, right? Because that's how these things work.
It works, always. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of my faves, as you know, that I've loved to play in really big spots, but he did not cross my board that much this week. He's coming over from Europe with Tony Finau as well. Is Andrew Putnam at 8,100? It just doesn't seem like the right course for him for me. I like to play him in
I know you
spots.
do.
Yeah. Not going to be for me this week. How about you?
No, not for – I mean, I come from it from an opposite macro view. So this is not the time for me to jump on a guy who's been very impressive. I don't like the spot for him. I would much rather play the guys we talked about or bump down. Scott Piercy's a Vegas guy, worth noting. Brian Harman's going to be popular, but I really do like the spot. This whole range, there's a number of plays you could go to, and these are going to be staples of pretty much any build, construction that you take. You're going to need someone in this range most likely.
Yeah, we'll talk about Scott Piercy for a second. He said he's a Vegas guy. He has made note that he loves this golf course as well. His worst finish here since 2014 was a 32nd. So 4 top 25s. And that's exactly what you love at 7-9. Last week, he was the first person off the golf course. He came in last, I believe, 67. Yep. So he went home to Vegas really quick. His Saturday score was dreadful. I think Sunday he shot 6 over, maybe?
He was flirting with 80 at one point. It was bad.
Totally bummed. So I'm not putting any – point to where I was getting to. I'm actually not putting any stock into his stats last week. It looked like – it looks like a total give up. I want to get home and get prepared for this week. But if you look 3 weeks ago at the military tribute, he gained 8 strokes ball striking. Most of that was done with his approaches. So that says to me that it can't be too far off, right?
Scott Piercy is a guy that I don't want to say incredible ball striker, but notoriously a very good iron player. He is more erratic than you would think. And honestly, that's kind of a good thing when you're rostering him because it shows he drags down his stats with some ugly iron performances. So that means when he's on, he's even more electric than you would think of someone who's pretty steady along the way. So I can get down with him. And like I said, this range has got people. I don't think I'm going to get to Bubba, but he is there. Brian Harman.
Yeah, let's chat about him for a second.
Just playing fantastic.
Kind of out of nowhere, right? I mean, was basically non-existent the first half of the year, and then all of a sudden at the Memorial, he looked like he found his approaches, and then since then he's gained in 6 of 8. Sorry, and he's a great putter. And if he had putted 2 weeks ago, he could have won in Sanderson
easily.
You're jumping right back in?
I am. It's a guy actually that I've been on kind of through this stretch, and the ball striking has been there. The putting, relative to how good of a putter he is, hasn't really. And he's still playing great golf. The price is there. The ownership is going to catch up because people see this, but I have no problem looking to him. What do you do? Because I certainly can't talk about this guy without just bias. And what are you doing with Grillo? Do you have any interest? He has just been awful, not just with the putter anymore. He's just awful altogether. Great ball striker, but my God, has the run of form been really ugly.
So two guys fit this bill for me this week. Grillo, and they're both priced right here. Grillo and Answer. And they're two guys that I believe should be much better than what they're doing. You know, Answer hasn't won on the PGA Tour. Grillo hasn't won since the Sanderson Farms in 2012, I think. It's a little shorter than that. But, yeah, it really frustrates me, especially when I look at Grillo, you know, gaining over a stroke in his approaches almost every single week and every single start, and losing 4 strokes putting last week. It's insane. Switching surfaces, maybe that gives him a little bit of confidence. I'm definitely not going to fade him. I think that ownership is just straight up tanking now, so I think we can go 10%, probably get 2 or 3x at this point. Abraham Answer had one of the funniest miscuts I've ever seen. I don't know if you followed Ben or you happened to hear it on one of my podcasts this week. Did you happen to catch it?
I did. I didn't see it live. Go ahead, tell it. Ridiculous though.
Yeah, ridiculous. He was 4 over on the round, 2 over for the day. He then birdied the par 5 on the front side to get it to 1 over total. Came to the 7th hole, needed to go birdie, birdie, birdie. Birdied 7 on a 20-footer, holed out on 8 from a bunker, par 5 9th, green side and 2 in the bunker. Again, same exact distance that he just holed it from, put it 20 feet and made par. So he did all the hard work, got to the easy hole, and blew it. Great stuff.
Familiar.
Great stuff. 7,700. Are you going to play him this week?
He's an interesting play because he's a very good, you know, he can get hot with the driver, and that's certainly a consistent stat. So we should see him gaining off the tee. That's the type of guy I did lean to in certain builds. You can be aggressive, get wedges in your hand. Going to have to make some putts, of course, but that's no different than any other week. I do prefer some of the other guys around him in terms of Harmon. You have HV3. I got to a little Grillo. I know I swore him off, but the bent grass splits maybe give me a little hope, but it's not like it was. The guy for me that sucked up a ton of ownership is just a couple $100 cheaper. It's Aaron Wise, who I know that he's going to be popular, but once again, I don't care. Vegas guy, likes this tournament, great driver of the ball, and to me, one of the better players in this range.
The worst price of the week, no doubt about it, in my eyes, by Draftkings. Fanduel is a little bit more expensive. Fantasy Draft, he's appropriately priced, but I think Draftkings, I can give you this. He was just 8,300 2 weeks ago at the Sanderson, and he was like 20% owned. Throw him at 7,500 in a similar field at a course that is made better for him. He's going to be over 20% owned this week. But like you said, I don't care. I don't really care that everyone's going to own him because he's the best play in this field. If you look at in this area, at 7,500, you're getting a guy that we know can win. We know has gotten hot in just his last 2 events with his ball striking. 3 starts here for a 20. I think he's 23-year-old. Made the cut in each of them. 2 top 15s, 1 top 10. That is everything we want from 7,500. Everything that I just read to you is 8,800 or higher, not 7,500. So I'm taking the price, not looking at ownership here.
You can differentiate elsewhere. It doesn't mean it's not to say that I'm locking Wise up because this is golf, but he just makes a great play in any format. As we work down, you know, there's other names. Munoz is playing great. Bud Cauley's there. Do you have any take, though? I wanted to ask you specifically about these 2 guys because you always have a good pulse on these Euros. So Bjerregaard and Tom Lewis have come back. They were at Alfred Dunhill. Are you going to try to target them? Tom Lewis, you know, he follows up a missed cut with a 5th place over there. He's so erratic. I'm not really there, but I wanted to see if you had any interest.
So Tom Lewis, he's not young by any stretch, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago when he played. Sorry, I'm just pulling him up here. The problem with him is he's so erratic. He has the withdraw 6 weeks ago, bounces right back and wins the Korn Ferry event. Then back-to-back miscuts, then a 5th place finish. For me, if you're going to play him at 7,300, you play him in a GPP, and you know he's got to be relatively low owned. I think maybe somewhere in the 7% range. I don't know what to do with this guy. We have such little stats on him. We can go to the European Tour stats, but it's not going to give us that much. Yeah, I'm not there on Lewis. Beauregard, we know a little bit more about. He's been on a bad run of form, though. He had that stretch at the beginning of the year last year, which you and I talked about him almost every week, and I loved him every week. But since then, it hasn't been. It's been very uninspiring. The PGA, he had a good week there. He's just basically been non-existent. 23rd last week at the Alfred Dunhill. He was the defending champ, so not bad. Yeah, he gets erratic off the tee, and that's where I think he can really get in trouble. And then he's not good with his irons. Just as a player as a whole, it's not the strength of his game. I'm okay with him at 7,300. It's an appropriate price, and I think I'll have some shares.
He's a tough guy to read too. The one thing you said, and I totally agree. We have a better idea of who he is as a player, in terms of skill set, in terms of maybe trying to get courses that fit. We know we can be aggressive with the tee, off the tee. It's been a tough thing. He boomed. I bring it up fairly often when we talk about him. I swear to God, Tiger, I don't know what happened. He beat Tiger and all hell broke loose in the match play. That was his crowning achievement. He got Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat style, like just soul taken out. I don't know. It seemed like that was his pinnacle, and now he's really regressed a bit. So I'm going to let other people do that chasing for the most part. There are other guys, and I want to ask you about this low 7K range, because I found myself needing someone, whether it's Russell Henley, whether it's Zach Johnson, Kyle Stanley, Cameron Percy. There's a lot of names. Did any stick out to you looking down here?
So this is the problem, is that, I see a guy that played well last week, and then I click his course history and I see he played well. But makes me nervous to play in anything big. And one of those guys, I think you just mentioned, Cheston Hadley, is one of them. He came in 23rd last week. He's got 2 back-to-back top 10s here, coming off a week where he gained 1.32 strokes tee to green. Everything seems to be setting up, to be completely honest, for Hadley. So right now, at this point, he's in my third lineup down, which is pretty high for somebody like Hadley. So I guess he would be the one that stuck out in that 7,200 to 6,900. Then there's a couple of guys at 6,700. Joel Damon was one where he missed the cut last week because of his putting, where I think he's a little bit better player than that. Plus, it was his first start back. So a little interest in Joel Damon. Did his name come up for you at all?
So he's another guy, and I guess I could relate it to Mortal Kombat because he wears a Raiden hat.
Yeah, he does. Yes, he does.
He had a really impressive run. It looked like he was going to win. I believe it was, Wells Fargo.
Yep.
And then since then, he has a pretty rough stretch. He doesn't have a top 20 since May. And that is a little concerning. Now, this is a guy, he's doing the heavy lifting with his ball striking. He's not a good putter, and the putter has been really cold. Maybe the change of surface helps. I'm not really there just because of that. Harry Higgs is the same price, and Harry Higgs is a guy that you talked about in your write-up early in the year about how he could compete and get in the mix, and he's looked great. He had a miscut sandwiched between 2 really quality starts, so I have no problem going to him in that 6K range, in the mid sixes. So other options for me, but it's tricky down here. I mean, that's what we're going to look at. We're not going to find guys that check all the boxes.
No, certainly. And that's why. So what do you make? I have to bring him up just because he's a talking point. But 7,300 in a weak field event, we're heading towards the Champions Tour, as I've pointed out a couple of times. Are you ever going to play Phil Mickelson ever again?
No. Can confirm. He is, first of all, Phil Mickelson, it's not a matter of if he is at the casino. We know that he's that's a given. Now, maybe I said this on the show yesterday. With him, he's probably at casinos no matter where the event is. So maybe this is no different than his normal routine. But he is not ready to play with the way he drives the ball right now. He's putting up 8s and 9s. He can't avoid that. it's a big wait and see for me for a long time.
So a guy that was in Alex's lineup last week and a guy that I know I'd say I don't like and I'm just not a huge fan of. I found out why he was in the field last week, and I'm talking about Daniel Berger, of course. And come to find out that the start last week was actually a huge one for him. He was on a major medical. I did not know that. He had 6 starts left on it, so he had plenty, and he ended up getting it. So he's back on tour, and he's back in full status, and he's back into the Players' Championship. Fantastic. It's more times I have to talk about him. But he relied on his putting last week. Approaches looked awful. Around the green was okay. That's kind of Dan's game. Is he's not really good with his irons. He never has been. What are you doing with him at 7,200? Because I know you like him, and this is an interesting price range with Johnny Vegas there, who I love to play. Beauregard and Tom Lewis, who we just mentioned as
well. What do you think he's going to be owned at?
Well, I can tell you that I really do lean on Alex and the guys for this. Yeah, and they have him projected. Let's see. They have him projected at 5%, so pretty low.
See, that makes me somewhat interested. And, in these big fields, you can look to guys like that. And it's also what you have to weigh down here is the opportunity cost. I don't see a ton of plays that I really like down here. I'm looking maybe just for a couple guys to fill out back into my roster where I have 5 others that I say, you know what, I feel great about this core. I feel great about this 4, and I'm going to rotate 2 V2s around them. Some of them are going to fall in this range. So you can look to these type of guys, and you're not going to find skill sets that are across the board. Maybe they can get hot, the Lanto Griffins of the world where they're extreme putters. Berger, we mentioned a couple other guys with ball striking. I'm going to mix and match there. There's no weather. There's nothing like that. It's just kind of playing the guys that fit that given lineup and trying to do the best you can in these lower ranges.
Yep. Absolutely. There was one other guy that I had on my note here that I wanted to ask you about. There. So we're playing TBC Summerlin. We're in Vegas. Very little water except for the pool at MGM Grand, which Ryan Palmer might find if it's possible. But literally, there's no water on this course. 2 really good finishes here. It's his first start, but at 7,300, I got to be honest, I'm interested.
Yeah, the Bellagio fountains are not that far away from so you never know, but you did mention he seems to have had some success here in 2018, especially. That was his best finish. And this guy he's a great iron player, got pedigree, got experience. We know that Ryan Palmer can get in the mix in any tournament. So he's had some success in the desert as well. I don't mind it. He is a guy, I think, if you're making, some tournament lineups, you want to look to him. He's going to be the right price, the right ownership level, and certainly has the upside. Now, your range of outcomes with Ryan Palmer is he can take you out of a tournament losing 5 strokes putting in 2 days. That's very possible. We just saw that with Kyle Stanley last week. Those are the type of guys you're going to have to deal with that if you start to roster them. But there's no doubt that Ryan Palmer is an interesting play and in play for May.
Yep, I think it's a nice low on pivot. He's had 2 really good starts here. The course would seem to fit up correctly for him. So let's get into, since we're at 9:56, and we'll go maybe a couple of minutes over just because we had Alex on before. Below 7K, there's a name that you and I talked about last week. We probably should have played him. This week, I'm just as intrigued, maybe more intrigued, which probably means that he's not going to play along this cut. But I'm talking about John Oda, who's on back-to-back Monday qualifiers, which is like almost unheard of. He went into the weekend in the top 10 last week. So I'm really interested. And this is where one of the reasons why I asked Alex the question about what does he do with these new guys that they have very little data on. And I've got another one, Isaiah Salinda, who's from Stanford playing in his second event. He also Monday qualified. I like both of them a lot this week. This is where I like to jump on these guys because I feel like their stats haven't caught up, so I can get an edge. Like with Morikawa in the beginning of his career, there was definitely an edge to have with him. Same with Patrick Cantlay when he first came back on tour. Same with Matthew Wolf, like we're seeing now. Am I reaching too far with John Oda and Isaiah Salinda, or are you interested in them as well this week?
So Isaiah Salinda, I don't know who that is. So that I have no idea.
Okay.
That sounds like a made-up person, and he might be made up.
Yep.
John Oda is someone that I don't know if I'll get to him, I'll be honest, but that's more because I don't know if I need a $6,300 player. I have absolutely no issue going to him. He has shown me enough where I say this guy can go out at Shriners this week and get me what I need. It doesn't mean he's gonna, but some of these people, it's a fine line. You just rattled off, and we talked about this earlier in the show with Matthew Wolf. If you have a line on a couple guys that you think I'm going to buy early before the public gets to see the stats, before the price catches up, it's a huge advantage. We also have to say that people did that with the Panda. And it doesn't work every time, but that's where you got to do your research if you want to dig. And I know you certainly have dug into some of these guys. And if you have a line on them, these are the type of swing season events to maybe take a stab with a guy like that. We've seen guys get in the mix. John Oda, as you mentioned, he has some firepower. So it's not insane. It's just you can't do it blindly with everyone, and you can't do it blindly cutting everyone out. Both of those are not the optimal strategy. It's a case-by-case basis.
Yep, it certainly is. And you mentioned Panda. I mean, poor guy, I don't think he makes Corn Ferry cuts anymore. I mean, it's just total tank. These two guys, at least we've seen compete in a PGA Tour event and make a cut. Salinga was really interesting to me because he's one that I followed a little bit towards the end of the college season. He ended up winning the NCAA championships for his team and had that clinching final putt, and then went to the Walker Cup, which has really, I mean, most of the golfers that made the Walker Cup we'll see in the next couple of years. So I'm really interested in Salinda. And John Oda, I thought last year was going to breeze through the Corn Ferry. I thought we were going to see him win twice and get the promotion, you know, that what do they call that, the journeyman promotion or the grinder promotion? I don't know. The no laying up guys have a name for it. I don't think it's an actual name. I think they made it up. Anyway, so I'm not going to lie. I got aggressive with both of them and playing both of them. It really opens up. You can get four guys, all that you like above that 8.5 range, and in with those two guys. You know, if you played those two guys last week at the, you know, bargain basement prices that they were, you would have opened the door to get JT in easily. Now, would you have found Champ in there as well? Maybe if you were trying to stack Cantlay and Thomas. So it does come down to roster lineup construction in that regard. So, okay, a couple more names down below 7K. You got any you want to throw at me?
Well, chat did mention Bill Haas, who has lost like 7 strokes putting. I don't think I can get there. It's a really sad day. Harry Higgs, we mentioned, no problem with him. It's really not a lot that I like down here. I mean, guys, Doc Redman, I'm not in love with him outside of the South just yet, but just on a pure pedigree, 6,500 on Draftkings to me was just a little low. The guy is a pretty good player. So if I get in a jam, I can look there. And you're right. You do open up a ton. If some of these guys can slip through the cut, and we know some will, man, does it help the other parts of your roster. You're really unlocking a ton of salary to spend up, maybe mix and match, maybe pair Brooks or Cantlay with another one of those top golfers and have that type of unique build.
Absolutely. Couple of more names down here that I'll throw at you. Last week was in the news because people said that he spit on Tony Romo's ball. He didn't spit on his ball. He was just looking to see what kind of ball it was, if it was. Did you hear about this?
No.
So Romo hit into the group. So it was on 6 on the front side, I think. Either it was one of the par 5s, and Romo was like 285 out and nuked a 3-wood and rolled up on Christopher Ventura, who was putting for birdie, trying to make his first cut on the PGA Tour. As a PGA Tour member, did make the cut. So, reason why I bring him up, Ventura, he's a bomber of the ball. He came out of nowhere. He was playing Mackenzie, then got web status on the Monday qualifying, won a couple events like within right away on the Corn Ferry. Interested, 6,300, made a cut last week. A course that we know you could probably spray it a little bit. So, a little interested in him. Sepp Straka will make a cut soon. I don't know if it's this week, but he's been He's been on the line 2 of the last 3 weeks, and I mean on the line. I mean, 3 weeks ago he actually gained strokes total and still missed the cut, which is just almost unheard of. Last week he was on the number again. So Straka, I'm a little interested in 6,300, and then a guy I love to play on the European Tour when I play over there. 3 straight top 30s, also from Vegas, lives in Vegas when he's not traveling. It's Kurt Kitayama. I'm surprised David Lipsky didn't get a sponsor exemption because he's in that band of guys that love it. Playing any Kitayama?
He's a UNLV guy for what it's worth.
Yep.
And that is a guy that I've talked about how you can say what you want about the Euro Tour. Yes, it's not as strong a competition, but give me someone who's been in Sunday final pairings, who's won something lately, over a guy who's 1 for 12 on made cuts and is playing against better competition, but just has not gotten in the mix. I think there's something to the mindset of being around cut numbers, of knowing what to do. So another guy that if I need to go down here, I'm very comfortable taking a stab with someone like that. I've seen enough from him. He's an American who, again, he's playing over there, but he's got some talent. Interesting question from chat. This is not related to golfers. Will you guys in the future do a live cut sweat show on Fridays? Well, Slack serves that up, but that is something we can consider for maybe majors or something. A couple more names, and then we'll bounce on out. Any Robbie Shelton? He's another guy. He's I believe a Bama, Mississippi guy. Maybe not a desert track. We don't know just yet. Any interest?
Yeah, he's been pretty popular and has had a good little stretch here. He's priced at 7K, 6.9. Sorry, numbers came off of what they did 3 weeks ago. I'd rather play my boy Keith Mitchell. It was $100 more. Yeah, I guess just in this kind of one-off, I do like Keith Mitchell, as you know. I feel like this should be a good course, but I have a good one-off for you. But before I ask you 2 more questions, then we'll get out of here. Keith Mitchell versus Sam Burns. Who you got? Burns finally made a cut last week. It seems like he's back, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, relying on his putter, but irons are just atrocious. Burns or Mitchell?
Probably Burns. Mitchell on bent grass actually freaks. He's one of the guys I don't super care about the grass. I care about the grass with him. I worry a bit. He showed on the Florida swing that he's phenomenal, and then he showed some other times maybe it's not all there. So we'll see. Yeah, I prefer Stanley over both of them. Right with you, chat. Other than that, a couple names that got thrown out. The Chinese bad boy, Xingzhou Zhang. Sure, if you're in a jam, him and Hubbard, I don't really have strong takes on them. I looked at them. I'm just probably not going to get there with, I'm not playing my full volume, so I'm not playing like 150 lineups or anything like that. Not going to get to those flyers outside of any large field GPPs.
Makes sense. All right, 2 more names.
Okay.
Then we'll get out of here because these 2 names we haven't seen in a long time, but they're 2 names that have certainly been a part of some GPPs. In fact, one of these names, one of the last times we saw him was part of the Millionaire Maker winning lineup for the PGA Championship 2 years ago. And I'm talking about Graham Dillette and James Hahn, both back in the field, both basically min-priced. Both are now on a major medical. We haven't seen in a real long time. Are either of these guys in play for you? Dillette is coming off of the same surgery, I believe, that Tiger had, right? Not the same surgery that Kevin Chappell had, though, right? He had that before. The microdiscotomy.
It's not good.
It's not good. Yeah, 2 years. October 2017, 2 years for Dillette. And for those wondering how he has status, again, it's the major medical. And James Hahn's the other one. He hasn't teed it up since February. So what do you make of those 2 guys? It's probably a wait and see, but are you going to jump on either?
Not really. So Dillette would be the one I would if it wasn't 2 years. That's just too long for me. He's a guy, he's got some trouble chipping, but he's a great ball striker. We know that. I'm just not going to try to anticipate what I can do with them. I don't think you lose anything by waiting. I'd be pretty stunned if one of them competes right off the bat. But long-term, we want to monitor because if they get back in form, Graham Dillette's certainly a guy that we will be playing and rostering in the future.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So we're going to bounce on out. We got to do a hot take. I do want to say real quick, chat, we love you. If you can hit the like button, It is always appreciated. Thanks for sticking with us. We definitely want to do more fun things with the show. So if you ever have ideas like what we did tonight with, bringing Alex on and doing some stuff, always hit me and Jason up in Slack. We love the feedback. I do want to say Biokim, 3-year suspension for flipping the bird. That's a little much, is it not?
So strong. So disappointed in that tour. I mean, the guy, I read, Chantal McCabe from the Golf Channel. She did a little story. His wife is 4 months pregnant. He was leading the tour in monies earned. I mean,
respect.
Like what? I mean, just think about this for a second, right? How many times have we seen football players get ejected and go off the field and flip people off? Ron Artest is in the stands fighting a guy, and this guy gets 3 years for flipping somebody off? What?
I wish that was a permanent golf rule, so they would have suspended Griot 3 years for flipping the bird a couple weeks ago at the Northern Trust when he lost 9 strokes and cost me money. Let's just say that.
Yeah, how about Tommy Fleetwood flipping the bird at the Masters?
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I think it's disappointing. I hope that they reverse that decision or he appeals it or something, because it seems super harsh. Not gonna lie.
All right. Hot take time before we bounce on out of here. What is my hot take gonna be? What is it gonna be? I'm gonna say it's nothing too crazy. Just looking at the 9K range on DraftKings, I'm gonna say that Ben Yan is the best player out of the 9K, and that's got some names in there. I like a lot of those guys, but I'm willing to go back to On after a really bad week that I'm throwing out. I think he can get the ball striking in tune at a course, and if the putter, we don't really know, traditionally bad, showed some signs. I'm willing to go to bat with Ben Yan a little in that range. Even though, Finau is there too. That's a tough challenge, but I'm still going to stick with it, even though I do really like Tony Finau. I want to make that clear.
Okay. All right. No, I mean, that's kind of why I gave that.
Yeah.
Really? Because Tony Finau is my guy as well this week. I really think he's just going to win soon, more maybe than I want him to. But, okay, interesting. I hope you're wrong. Just because I got Tony Finau, I'm staring at the lineup right now.
I want to be clear. I like Finau a lot in all forms, but Ben Yan is a sneaky guy this week, one that I'm willing to take some stabs on.
All right, guy that I'm willing to take a stab on for sure. Also, one more name at below 7K, Roger Sloan, 6,600. We talk about him a lot. He's been actually super consistent, had a good week at the Safeway Open. Definitely interested in him. I think this is a good course for him. All right, I got John Oda getting in the top 10 this week. I get him earning another start. The guy has got tremendous talent. He was just as good as Morikawa a year ago, and obviously lost motivation down on the Korn Ferry Tour. But this nice little stretch of golf for him, back-to-back Monday qualifiers, playing at what probably he would consider, except for out in Hawaii and Kilauea, this is probably his home course for all intents and purposes. Going to UNLV. So in on John Oda this week.
I like it. That's a good one. So as we always say, everyone, we really do appreciate you stopping in. We want to thank Fantasydraft, as we always do. If you haven't signed up over there, use the promo code AWESEMO, 7-day free trial, rake free. That is the place to be. Just ask Ship My Money, as I'm going to say a lot, because he took down all the money over there. We're doing good things, not just with golf. We've got all the sports on deck. Hockey started, many other things coming up. So we're going to duck on out of here. If you have any questions, find me and Jason. We love the feedback, and we do love to talk to everyone. Hope to see you in Slack. Good luck, everyone, at the Shriners. Let's make some money. And we'll be back here next Wednesday night, breaking it down once again.